Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, today this is the 40th lecture of this course. I am hopeful that all the previous lectures have been able to clearly set in your mind the title of this lecture is Collection of Data Through Questionnaires. We have discussed the collection of data through observation method. We have discussed the collection of data through the interview method, and now we are going to collect the data through the questionnaires. And of course, these all are related to the primary data. In this method, a questionnaire, that is a list of questions, is sent usually by post to the persons concerned with a request to answer the questions and return the questionnaire. This questionnaire consists of a number of questions printed or typed in a different order on a form or set of forms. The respondents have to answer the questions on their own. The method of collection of data by mailing the questionnaire to respondents is most extensive employed in various economic and business surveys. Not only that, but in other aspects of society also. The questionnaires are mailed. If suppose one has to study the quality of service at, say, Maulana Azad Library of Aligarh Muslim University, then the questionnaires could be sent to the users, to those who attend the library. A sample has been made because every day thousands of students, they use the library. So a sample is selected, a questionnaire is developed, and respondents are requested to fill up the questionnaire and send back, so that the problem at hand could be handled by the researcher, could be implemented by the researcher. The merits claimed on the behalf of these methods are as follows. There is low cost even when the universe is large and is widely spread geographically. Because if the population or universe is very large and is widely spread geographically, then we have to adopt this method only, because the cost is low, cost involved is low. Suppose we are working on the performance of the commercial banks in India. So, the population or universe is also very large, and they are spread all over India. So, in such cases, the questionnaire method is useful. Further, it is free from the bias of the interviewer. Answers are in respondent's own words. The interviewer, if he is biased on some issues, he can manage from his questions to inject his bias into the collection of data. So if the data collected has the injection of biasness, then how could we have a conclusion which is without bias? So it is free from the bias of the interviewer, and answers are in respondents' own words. The respondents have adequate time to give well thought out answers, because the respondent has been sent the questionnaire and a time has been given, 1 month, 15 days, 10 days, 1 week, or even more than a month, so that the respondents has adequate time and he can think its responses or answers very comfortably. Further, there are respondents who cannot be easily approachable. However, through this method, all of them can be reached conveniently. Further, large samples can be made use of, and thus the results can be made more dependable and reliable. The expenditure is less on this collection of data through questionnaire, and so the given the budget, the sample selected for a study could be large, and so the results are more dependable and reliable. The main demerits of the system can also be listed here. Low rate of return of the duly filled questionnaires. Bias due to non-response is often indeterminate, because many people would sit over the questionnaire and they would never respond, because there is nobody who can force them or request them and urge them to fill up the questionnaire and return back. The control over questionnaire may be lost once it is sent. There is inbuilt inflexibility because of the difficulty of amending the approach once questionnaires have been dispatched. There is also the possibility of ambiguous replies or omission of replies altogether to certain questions. Interpretation of omissions is difficult because there is nobody to request him for all the answers to all the questions. So he can omit some, he can leave some, which is inconvenient to him. It is difficult further to know whether the willing respondents are truly representative or not, and the method is likely to be slowest of all. The method is very slow because there they could take any time. You have given them 1 week, they can take 4 weeks. You have given them 1 month, they can take 3 months, because there is nothing which forces them to reply quickly. Before further, before using this method, it is always advisable that a pilot study or pilot survey could be conducted for testing the questionnaires. In a big inquiry, the significance of pilot survey is felt very much. Pilot survey is in fact the replica and rehearsal of the main survey. Such a survey being conducted by experts brings to the light the weaknesses, if any, of the questionnaires and also of the survey techniques. From the experience gained in this way, improvement can be effected. So, the replica or the rehearsal or the pilot survey is very important in the questionnaire method. We have developed a questionnaire, but we might have left certain more useful questions and might have included peripheral questions. Some central questions might have been left and some peripheral questions might have been included, or there could be some questions which are not necessary, and some necessary questions are not present here. So, once we develop a questionnaire, once a questionnaire is developed, then the pilot survey is taken to improve the questionnaire, and that is very important, because once we go to the respondents with the questionnaire, then we get to understand the type of the questionnaire that we have. So, in such a survey conducted by experts brings to the light the weaknesses of the questionnaires and also of the survey techniques. From the experience gained in this way, improvement is made to the questionnaire. Now we discuss the main aspects of the questionnaire. What are those main aspects? Because questionnaire is the heart of the survey operation, heart of the survey. So, much care has to be taken in constructing or developing the questionnaire, because if it is not set up properly, if it is not constructed properly, the survey is bound to result in the wrong way. So, the fact requires us to study the main aspects of questionnaire, which are the general form, question sequence, and question formulation and wording. Researchers should note the following with regard to these three main aspects of questionnaire. So, here what should be the aspects of questionnaire that have also to be discussed? What is the general form? So far as the general form of the questionnaires are concerned, it can either be structured or unstructured questionnaire. What are the structured questionnaires? These are those questionnaires in which there are definite, concrete, and predetermined questions. The questions are presented with exactly the same wording and in the same order to all respondents. Resort is taken to this sort of standardization to ensure that all respondents reply to the same set of questions. So, this is not an examination that even we change the numbering of the questions. No. Whether it is a structured questionnaire or unstructured, the questions should have same wording, same sequence and same order to all the respondents. And of course, in the unstructured questionnaires are not definite, not concrete and not predetermined questions. The form of the question may be either closed, that is of the type yes or no, or open, advising, that is inviting free response, but should be stated in advance and not constructed during the questioning. So, we can have the dichotomous answers, yes or no, whether you like this brand, yes or no, either yes or no. He can say yes, he can say no. Do you like the new policy of education, new education policy? He can say yes or he can say no. So, here what we find that the answers are closed for the respondents. He has only these two options, no other options. And he cannot also say give answer to what he feels. So, it could be either this dichotomous or multiple, or a space should be given to freely, so that the researcher freely gives responses to the questionnaires. But in all, it has to be stated in advance or not, and not constructed just during the time of the questioning. No. Structured questionnaires have fixed alternative questions in which responses of the informants are limited to the stated alternatives. And a highly structured questionnaire is one in which all questions and answers are specified, and comments in the respondent's own words are held to the minimum. When these characteristics are not present in a questionnaire, it can be termed as unstructured or non-structured questionnaire. That is, the questions have not been fixed, and also the answers have not been fixed, and the respondents can give answer in his or her own words. Then we can say that this is an unstructured or non-structured questionnaire. Then the question sequence is also important. In order to make the questionnaire effective and to ensure quality to the replies received, a researcher should pay attention to the question sequence in preparing the questionnaire. Sequencing is very important. If in the very beginning we started with difficult questions. The respondent would be, his motivation would decline. He would feel is very difficult about filling this questionnaire, and he may not fill up at all the questionnaire. The sequencing is very important, and if the respondent finds that okay, these are very easy questions and I can always fill this questionnaire, then he can start. And once he goes ahead, even if difficult questions come in, he would be doing it. So, a proper sequence of questions reduces considerably the chances of individual questions being misunderstood. The question sequence must be clear and smoothly moving, meaning thereby that the relation of one question to another should be readily apparent to the respondent, with questions that are easiest to answer being put in the beginning. The first few questions are particularly important because they are likely to influence the attitude of the respondent and in seeking his desired cooperation. The opening question should be such as to arouse human interest. The following type of questions should be generally be avoided as opening questions in a questionnaire. What are those? Number one, questions that put too a great strain on the memory or intellect of the respondent. These questions should be avoided in the very beginning. If we went on asking the tough questions, like suppose, what are the fundamental articles of the Constitution, or fundamental rights and duties of the citizens, then it is something which only experts can answer, not everybody. Or we go on putting questions regarding some phenomenon which is the phenomenon itself is very technical, and we begin with, then it gives a strain to the memory or intellect of the respondent. So, these should be avoided. Questions of personal character, these should not be given in the very beginning, because then you would simply not cooperate and run away from filling the questions, because it asks him his questions about the personal character of him. So, those who are in the process of developing the questionnaire, they have to avoid the questions which do put great strain in the memory or intellect of the respondent, or any questions regarding the personal character, they should be avoided. Further, the questions relating to the personal wealth or personal life, these should be avoided, because nobody wants to reveal the various aspects of his or her personal life and also the personal wealth. So, these questions should not be put in the very beginning, otherwise, the respondents would simply disassociate or they would simply not fill the questionnaire. And our dream of getting a good questionnaire, collecting the data through a good questionnaire would remain a dream. Then after the opening questions, we can have questions that are really vital to the research problem, and connecting thread should run through successive questions. If we are working on the Indian migrants from the GCC countries, so after asking questions about where he was employed, how long he stayed there, these kind of questions. Now the question developer, the researcher, after a few questions, easy questions, which in fact makes the respondent feel comfortable, then we should put some vital questions. What was the working hours? What was the behavior of the head of the office? Were the wages paid in time? Wages were paid in the bank or in cash? These are the vital questions regarding research on Indian migrant workers in Gulf Cooperation Council countries. These could be put after the questions, opening questions, the questions which should be of introductory nature, and then the vital questions. And ideally, the question sequence should conform to the respondent's way of thinking. But how much it could be, it depends upon the researcher. Knowing what information is desired, the researcher can rearrange the order of the questions. However, this is possible only in case of unstructured questionnaire. In a structured questionnaire, there is no option of rearranging. So, if it is unstructured questionnaire, the researcher can rearrange it to fit the discussion in each particular case. Now, question formulation and wording. With regard to this aspect of questionnaire, the researcher should note that each question must be very clear for any sort of misunderstanding. If there are any question which should create misunderstanding, then this would do irreparable damage to the survey, and not only one respondent but other respondents also may feel constrained to cooperate with the data collection. Questions have also to be impartial in order to give an unbiased picture of the true state of affairs. If the question setup are not impartial, they are not going to give a biased picture of the true state of affairs of the phenomenon. Questions have to be constructed with a view to their forming logical part of a well thought out tabulation plan. Because after all, these questions, the data collected through these questions have to be tabulated. So there should be a logical way or thought out way or thought out tabulation plan, and this is how questions have to be constructed. In general, all questions should meet the following standard. Number one, the questionnaire should be easily understood. It should be simple, that it should convey only one thought and one time. Not make the respondents confused. Should be concrete and conform as much as possible to the respondent's way of thinking. For example, instead of asking how many razor blades do you use annually, a more realistic question could be to ask how many razor blades did you use last week? Because if we are doing a survey of the razor blades and we ask a question that how many to the respondent, how many razor blades do you use annually, it is a difficult answer because nobody keeps the account of how many razor blades he used in 1 year or even in 6 months or in a quarter. The realistic question is that how many razor blades did you use last week? That would be in the memory of the respondent, and he can of course answer this, and this answer can be extrapolated to monthly or say quarterly or annually consumption of the razor blades. Concerning the form of questions, we have two principal forms: multiple choice questions and open-end questions. In the multiple choice questions, the respondent selects one of the alternative possible answers put to him, whereas in the latter, he has to supply the answer in his own words that we have already discussed. The question with only two possible answers, usually yes or no, can be taken as a special case of multiple choice questions or can be named as closed questions. There are some advantages and disadvantages of each possible form of the question. Sometimes the provision of alternative replies helps to make clear the meaning of the question. But the main drawback of the fixed alternative questions is that of putting answers in people's mouths. That is, they are forced a statement of opinion on an issue about which the respondent does not in fact have any opinion. If he does not have any opinion, but he has to put one of the answers in the alternative replies. They are not appropriate when the issue under consideration happens to be a complex one, and also when the interest of the researcher is in the exploration of a process. So in practice, one rarely comes across a case when one questionnaire relies on one form of questions alone. The various forms complement each other. As such, questions of different forms are included in one single questionnaire. For instance, multiple choice questions constitute the basis of a structured questionnaire, particularly in male survey. But even there are various open-ended questions which are generally inserted to provide a more complete picture of the respondents' feeling and attitudes. So, with this, we have tried to cover the various aspects of the collection of data through questionnaire. Those who develop the questions, they have to keep these things in their minds. The opening questions, the vital questions, or difficult terminologies which a person cannot understand, or say making things difficult for the respondent. You ask him how many kilos of milk your family consumes in a year. One would not be able to reply. But if we ask daily or weekly consumption, one can give easy answer, and it could be extrapolated to the way, to the periods whatever is required for the research. So, developing of the questionnaire is a very crucial in this collection of data through questionnaire. However, it is very popular method of research. Further, if the same questionnaires are not mailed, but these questionnaires are sent in person with surveyors, and the surveyor helps them to fill these questionnaire, it is called the schedule method. So, questionnaire is in both, whether it is collection of the data through questionnaire method, list of questions is there, and list of questions are in the schedule method also. The list of questions, the rules and regulations, and the methodology of developing the list of questions in the questionnaire method are similar to the questionnaire that would be, or the list of questions that would be developed through the schedule method. The only difference is that the collection of data through questionnaires is done through mails, whereas MAILS, mails, mailing, whereas in schedule method there are various surveyors appointed and who approach the respondent, go to them, and there they try or convince the respondent to fill the list of questions which he has taken with himself, and then bring back those field questionnaires. So, of course, the frequency would be higher of returning the questionnaires in the schedule method. However, in schedule method, the surveyor is in between the questionnaire questions and the respondent. So, if he is not totally unbiased, his biasness may influence also the respondents' responses, whereas in case of the data collection through questionnaires, there is no in between. There are the list of questions and the respondent, and the respondent may respond to the questions freely without interference. However, it all depends upon the nature of the problem, how the researcher decides to go for the collection of the data, and also the budget which he has for collection of the data. Thank you very much. I wish I have been able to make it clear how to collect the data through the questionnaire method and what is the difference between the questionnaire method and the schedule method. Thank you again.